Good evening. I'm calling to order this meeting of the Planning and Development Council of the Town of Oakville for February 18th. Madam Clerk, do we have any regrets?
We do not have any regrets,
All
but we have a
right.
couple of counselors we are waiting for.
It looks like everybody's joined us, maybe one to join us in progress. All right. Councilor, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? No. Madam Clerk, there are no declarations. Would two of us like to move and second us into a committee of the whole? Councilor McNeese and Councilor Haslett-Deal, thank you. Any objection? Council, there's no objection. That's carried. And we have no consent items. In fact, the only item we have tonight is the OPA 70, the Official Plan Amendment 70 for Midtown. And we have a recommendation report from staff after all of the consultation and input that we've received. And we have 7 registered delegations. And when the registered delegations are done, I will poll the public to see if any additional volunteers might pop up. And with that, I think I'd like to turn, I know that the presentation is to be given by Sibel von Kersel. And I guess I'm your introducer. So we are all ears to see what you did, what staff did with all of the input that you solicited and listened to.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council and members of the public. We're really pleased to be here tonight to talk to you about the official plan amendment for Midtown and the community planning permit system. I'm going to try and keep this presentation pretty brief for you. It is with the recommendation that Council adopt the OPA as is presented in Appendix A of the staff report. And this presentation, as I said, will be brief. I'll just touch on a few points in terms of the rationale and for why we should be adopting this OPA today. So let's start with a reminder of our OPA development journey. Key milestones are provided on this slide here. And as you can see, this OPA has been in formulation over the past 8 years. It is informed by townwide and regional processes, as well as area-specific technical reviews and many, many public consultation opportunities and events, wherein we discussed options and alternatives, issues and opportunities. Which brings us here today with a recommendation to adopt the OPA and request that the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing approve the OPA. The purpose of the recommended official plan amendment is to identify Midtown Oakville as a protected major transit station area and a community planning permit area, and to provide the necessary policy direction to pass a community planning permit bylaw, which will then allow the town to issue development permit approvals in a streamlined one application, one approval process. Since the December 2024 version of the OPA, staff have considered all comments and received and have made additional changes to the OPA, and these changes can be characterized in 4 buckets. For clarity and brevity, to be responsive to the comments from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing on behalf of their partner ministries, to be responsive to comments from the public and landowners, and to provide some more clarity regarding the application of the community planning permit system in Midtown. And as you probably saw, Appendix B of the report identifies the specific policy changes and additions, along with the rationale for the change. Appendix C provides the comments from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, and Appendix E provides a summary of all comments received. As noted on this slide, the recommended OPA meets approval requirements of the Planning Act, and it meets the Minister of Infrastructure's transit-oriented community objectives. The January 20th Planning and Development Council minutes include a list of questions regarding the proposed OPA and its implementation. So I'll just go over some of the responses that were provided in a very brief manner to the 8 questions that were raised by council in those minutes. So the first topic was sustainability measures. And as noted in the staff report, legislation and policy authorize the town to mandate, encourage, and incentivize sustainable measures that were noted in Table 1 of that staff report. The matters that are listed as encouraged or incentivized are ones that the town is not yet able to require through a development approvals process, especially where it is a matter that is addressed by the building code. While a builder can do better than the building code, we can only require that they meet the code requirements. And more work regarding green development standards and their implementation will be undertaken in 2025, and staff will report back on that work. In terms of public parkland, Schedule L1 land use designates about 12 hectares of land as existing parks and open spaces, or future parks as park conceptual. Presently, we have 3.6 hectares of existing parkland, and through recent purchases, we have an additional 1.1 hectares for parkland. And based on the town's parkland dedication bylaw and available land for development, we estimate an additional 5.5 to 6.3 hectares of land may be secured through our parkland or cash in lieu dedications, which means we will need to secure the balance of 1 to 1.8 hectares through our parkland reserve funds, through the implementation of the community planning permit bylaw, or through partnership with public agencies, or a combination of all 3. In terms of the Midtown Transportation Plan and the Townwide Transportation Master Plan, the Townwide Transportation Master Plan and Midtown Transportation Plan, both work to date, have informed the OPA. Finalizing the OPA through council adoption allows the engineers to undertake more detailed work via their plans that are undertaken per the environmental assessment process. What we have learned through this work and the townwide TMP is that business as usual cannot continue. Changes in the transportation mode split are required, and we need to make the necessary investment in transit and active transportations for that to happen. With the adoption of the official plan amendment, wherein key transit routes, active transportation, and new streets are identified, the consultants can complete their work in accordance with the Environmental Assessment Act, and the conclusion of these plans will inform phasing in Midtown and capital planning. In terms of the Midtown planning horizon, the horizon goes beyond 2051. Redevelopment in intensification areas takes a long time because successful and established development are presently located in these areas. These developments may not wish to reestablish or vacate their properties to accommodate the Midtown vision in the same planning horizon as the target or forecast horizons that we've been talking about over the last few months and years. And we see this happening across the Greater Toronto Area. So to motivate redevelopment, as noted in the NVLC market analysis report, we need to provide planning permissions that foster viable development, and we need to invest in these communities so that early occupants of new development are living and working in an attractive and desirable area. In terms of the community planning permit system implementation, with the passing of the community planning bylaw, the bylaw is passed and the town will issue development permits for new development within Midtown. The approval of these permits may be subject to conditions that would be required to be met prior to, at the time of, and or after a development permit is issued. Within the bylaw, we will establish various types of conditions of development permit approval. One of these conditions would be with respect to situations where the applicant chooses to construct a building that is taller than the building height threshold assigned to their site on Schedule L4 building height threshold. So you may recall from our October workshop that when this occurs, staff will determine how much of the gross floor area of the building is located within the floors of that building that exceed the height threshold, and then will determine what the commensurate community benefit should be for that additional height based on the provisions of the bylaw. If the requested height does not exceed the maximum density or result in a conflict with any other policy of the plan, and the applicant is willing to provide a community benefit in cash or ideally in kind, then the development permit approval can be made with that condition attached. Holding provisions. Another type of condition provided in the OPA is to permit the town to approve a development permit application subject to certain matters being addressed prior to the issuance of a development permit. This condition is implemented in a similar manner to how the town uses holding provision bylaws. In terms of housing, the OPA permits and enables a range of housing types and tenures for both small and large households. We will come back to council with policies to implement inclusionary zoning in the fall. And should those policies be approved, we can then mandate the provision of affordable housing. And lastly, on the topic of landowner groups and agreements, the revised policies of the OPA contemplate the creation of one or more landowner group that we believe are needed to be formed to create equitable cost-sharing agreements amongst the landowners. The revisions also shift the requirement to confirm participation in the landowner group as a condition of complete application to a condition of subdivision or development permit approval, or where the CPP bylaw is not yet in effect, as a condition of site plan approval. And as you're aware, the staff report provides more fulsome responses to these matters should you need more information. So in terms of next steps, while the OPA is with the minister for approval, staff will continue to work on implementation tools as listed on the slide. Consultation on the inclusionary zoning OPA or the community planning permit bylaw and public realm and design guidelines will generally occur concurrently, with approval of the inclusionary zoning OPA and passing of the community planning permit bylaw that would include IZAD provisions to occur in early 2026. The transportation plan and stormwater plan for Midtown, in accordance with the Environmental Assessment Act, will conclude in the summer of 2025. And the development of the community improvement plan will commence in earnest in September of 2025 and conclude in the spring of 2026. So this brings me to the conclusion of this presentation. With the adoption of the OPA, Council would be implementing its strategic priorities, implementing the town's urban structure, advancing the town's effort to fulfill its housing pledge, and declaring its position on Midtown development, which will be informative for all decision makers, including the Ministers of Municipal Affairs and Housing and of Infrastructure and the Ontario Land Tribunal. Thank you for your attention. We are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Let's see if you have any. Do you have a question for Sybil? Well, we have two questions, and I have one, so I guess we're going to go with Councillor Adams. You're up, then Councillor O'Meara.
Thanks very much, and thank you very much for the summary presentation. I appreciate it. Could you go through in a little bit more detail how this OPA will apply to existing applications, including the TOC locations? We passed it this evening, but it doesn't necessarily apply to a whole bunch of locations that are already in stream because we've taken so long to get to this point. How do they apply, and how does it apply to the TOC locations if the TOC continues, and if the TOC doesn't continue, or if it falls apart in some way?
Okay, so through you, Chair, on page 16 of the staff report, there is a section with a subheading Current Development Applications, which speaks to your question. The OPA, once adopted, as I mentioned in the presentation, is a reflection of Council's a position on how development should occur within Midtown, and that would be an informative piece for the ministers as well as the Ontario Land Tribunal. The decisions that are made by the OLT or the tribunal, or the ministers, isn't required to conform with the adopted OPA, but it is an informative piece to their own decision-making processes.
So in other words, what we pass tonight doesn't necessarily get any standing in a number of locations.
We'll defer to legal.
Councillor and Sibel,
Yeah.
I think I'd like to direct your question to the town solicitor, Mr. Carr.
Very well.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, I wouldn't quite put it to say that they don't have standing. I would refer to the staff report at page 16, as referred to by Sibel. There's a section of the Planning Act, section 2.1, which provides that approval authorities are required to have regard to council's decisions when making their decisions. Approval authorities, of course, refers both to the minister and to the OLT on any appeals that are before them. So while the answer stands that whatever council adopts this evening is not determinative of those matters that are presently before the OLT, the tribunal is charged by the statute to have regard to the policies that council adopts.
Thank you. I think that's very helpful for the public.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you very much. So thank you for this report. I think it's great, and I think the work that everybody's put into it is fantastic. My question is just about the elements about addressing the elements of the TOC that the ministry is looking for. Is that a normal part of an OPA, or is that just something we've done in here because we know that is a chess piece that's involved in the game right now, or is that a new standard flag bearer to do when OPAs come forward now?
Councillor, I think we'd also direct that question to the solicitor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll do my best. I think it's best to consider them as two separate and distinct processes. The town will always have the opportunity to revisit its official plans over time and pass amendments as it deems appropriate in following the statutory processes. And it's been a long-standing process, as you've heard, with respect to the Midtown policies that are before you this evening. So all of those processes are set out under the Planning Act. The TOC process, however, is not a process under the Planning Act. It is a process that's been initiated by the province under different legislation, and it seeks to achieve certain goals in certain properties. In this case, we have 4 properties owned by district that are subject to that TOC process. They're still being processed by the province, and they may or may not culminate in approvals issued by the province. We'll just have to wait and see.
Sorry. Thank you. I appreciate that. I guess then just to speak out loud, we feel in this report that we have met the objectives that the province has through its growth plans and its policy statements, but also the objectives that it's looking for in the TOC. Is that, am I reading that correctly in the report?
Sibel, that's for you.
That's me. Yes. In our analysis, we believe that the Midtown OPA fulfills the objectives of the Minister of Infrastructure as it relates to transit-oriented communities.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Sibel, I just have one small question. When you were speaking about the CPPS, I think before I go, Councillor Chisholm.
Yes, just a question from the ministry's letter with respect to affordable housing. They're looking for a clear definition of affordable housing within the report, which is not contained. Are we to assume, as we move forward on the housing needs assessment, that will come forward?
Through you, Chair. Yes, the intention is that as we do our broader official plan update, we would incorporate a definition of affordable housing, and that would be informed by the housing needs assessment work that we are undertaking.
And with a large report, and I've missed this, but when would that be coming forward? Back to council?
So we're undertaking the housing needs assessment in 2 phases. So the first phase will meet the requirements of the federal housing needs assessment template. The second one will be a more robust report, and in that report, which we'll bring back to you in the summer, we'll have more of that information in terms of recommendations for official plan updates and policies.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. Councillor McNeice.
Thank you, Worship. Just a quick technical question regarding the community improvement plan work. Would that be looking geographically at the Midtown area, or would that be a general policy like the CPPS policy that would permit it in different geographies across the town?
So we'll be preparing a background report regarding CIPs, community improvement plans, and we would be talking about different options for council to consider. So the CIP could be a townwide CIP, or it could be area specific. So those are decisions that council will be making in the fall.
Okay,
And give direction accordingly.
Thanks for that clarity.
Thank you, Councillor McNeice. So, Sibel, when we were speaking about the CPPS, I thought it would be helpful for the public if you could tease out a little bit for us the distinction between the CPPS and zoning, which might normally follow an OPA.
Right.
And the CPPS, as I've understood from previous presentations, substitutes itself for zoning. Could you elucidate?
Certainly. So the community planning permit bylaw would replace the zoning bylaw. So this bylaw would be what would inform the regulatory aspects of planning. And the difference between the zoning bylaw and the CPP bylaw is that in a CPP bylaw, we can build in elements that we would normally have to go through a minor variance procedure for. So it allows for us to provide some direction around variance, and it allows for more flexibility in the decision making. And the one piece that's really differentiates is the fact that you're making one application for something that you would otherwise have to do through a site plan process as well as a rezoning process. You're doing it all at one time. So one application, one approval authority, and then it will inform the kind of site-specific requirements for each development site. So
Thank you.
hopefully that illuminated.
I thought that was perfect.
Okay.
And I would just follow it up with, if you could give the same kind of clarity about inclusionary zoning coming back in the fall, just to explain to people what inclusionary zoning is,
Sure. So
especially in the context of a CPPS.
yes. The Planning Act allows municipalities to pass inclusionary zoning bylaws in areas that are identified as protected major transit station areas. So Midtown is a PMTSA, and so therefore we can bring in those provisions. And what that allows us to do is to require a certain percentage of units in a development site to be affordable for a defined period of time. And so that means when the units are being resold or rented to new occupants, it maintains that affordability price or rent, which is not something we can do through other means. So this is the piece that's new in the Planning Act, and it would be new to Oakville. But in order for us to pass those kind of bylaws, we first have to have enabling policy, which we propose to do starting in the fall, following the completion of the housing needs assessment. We need to complete that first before we can proceed to include those kind of provisions in our bylaws.
So the entire planning process is revealed in these 2 examples as a very stepwise process.
Yes.
Councillor Haslett-Deal.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Burton. Thank you for how you formatted all of the report. It was much easier to follow than others that we've had in terms of comparison of where we were, where we're going. And I just wanted to acknowledge the effort that that took. Can you just clarify for me, there's a statement in the report that talks about, traffic congestion will have to be tolerated. Is there a threshold, and when and how is that evaluated? I understand, we're taking on more people if this is approved tonight, but at what point is, what is that threshold? And how is that determined in the development of the master transportation plan?
Through you, Chair, I'll try to answer your question. What we've been saying is, as development occurs within Midtown, we will make sure that the infrastructure to support that development happens in lockstep. I think what you were referring to in the report was sort of that broader understanding that as municipalities grow, not just Oakville, but anywhere, there's a point where we need to rely more on other modes of travel as opposed to just our regular, single-person vehicle form of travel. So as municipalities mature, and you see this in Europe, you see this in major cities across North America, we're relying more on a variety of modes of travel to be able to get around within our communities. And that's just part of maturing and growing up in these more dense areas.
So generationally, I would agree with you that there's going to, over time, have to be some level of evolution. But I just wanted to be clear that that statement isn't talking about requiring I'm trying to get at what is the level of tolerance, given there'll be developments that occur, and as much as there is a commitment to a lockstep infrastructure, the roads only expand so much, and there's only so many off-ramps or bridges that can be provided. Mm-hmm. So there isn't a quantitative number at that point. Would it be shared with us in the transportation master plan when it comes to council?
Sorry.
Yes, through Mr. Mayor, yes, we will share that through the Transportation Master Plan report.
Okay, and Commissioner, while you're there then, can you just confirm that will efforts be made to have not multiple road construction? So we know that there's multiple approaches to some of the road networks changing. Will there be a coordination so that we're not ripping up Trafalgar and then we're not ripping it up again, and we're not ripping up Cross and then ripping it up again, given that the arterials are already experiencing congestion?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, definitely would be a coordinated effort to manage construction.
Okay, thank you very much. My other question is just in terms of some of the items that aren't in the policy but people have spoken to. So, for example, ensuring a child-friendly design, or ensuring that it is a separated bike lane. Are all those pieces addressed in the implementation studies or work that's coming forward?
Through you, Chair, I think it's definitely a variety of different tools that we would be using. So we have public realm guidelines, we have urban design guidelines, we have transportation plans. So the OPA sets the foundation, and it's these other implementing tools. Like, not everything needs to be in an official plan policy for good planning to happen. We need to find the right location in terms of where we put that information so that everyone, there's a common understanding of what those expectations are. So those supporting studies would inform those types of questions that you have.
And so thank you for clarifying that for the public, because I think it's important. Mm-hmm. Do those supporting studies hold weight in terms of the ability to hold a developer to certain expectations? So you mentioned earlier we can't ask for more than the building code, but we may have a green energy plan by the end of the year. So will they hold, whatever legal word it is, people to that standard?
Through you, Chair, I think it's a matter of what is the direction? Certainly, there's a requirement under the Planning Act. If you have an official plan, you must conform to the official plan. The bylaw that implements the official plan conforms to the official plan. Decisions that are made must be conformed to the bylaw. What we've been saying, though, is in the community planning permit bylaw, there's opportunity to build in discretionary decision-making and flexibility, and which is informed by not only the policies of the official plan, but also the work that we're doing behind the scenes in terms of these guidelines and master plans and things like that as well. And so then it becomes, what's in the bylaw, which would be applicable law, and then what is in the actual development permit, because that too is applicable law. So if we've engaged with the developer and we've agreed to certain standards in their development permit application and then approved that development permit application, that is now applicable law. So hopefully that answers your question.
It certainly does. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Elgar?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Burton. Schedule L4, people are very concerned that there is no maximum height. There is a threshold height.
Yes.
Can you explain how this was going to work? Because it's new to a lot of people and they don't get it. And I know you got it on page 15 here. You do explain it, but could you maybe in a few minutes explain to people what the heck you're really saying?
So through you, Chair, Schedule L4 is the threshold building heights. So in the bylaw, the community planning permit bylaw, we would have provision that said, the height is 20. Beyond 20 or 12 or 10, beyond that height, we will allow for an additional height based on two criteria. One is that the additional height doesn't result in exceeding your maximum density that's allocated to you, which is shown on Schedule 3. So those two schedules work together. So long as you're not exceeding the maximum density, you can have additional height. But that additional height beyond the threshold to that whatever the height is of the building without exceeding the gross density is where you will have a commensurate community benefit. And in the official plan, there are two sections that list what are potential community benefits, which include things like affordable housing or public art or the provision of a pedestrian bridge. There's a variety of things. And so that increase, the density, the delta between the, say, for example, 20 stories and 25 stories, there's an amount of GFA there. We'll need to understand what's that commensurate benefit that goes with that GFA. But there is, to some degree, there is a maximum height because you can't exceed the maximum density.
So if the people that understand L3 and L4, they can basically calculate it. It may not be the maximum height, but we do have the maximum density.
Yes, yes.
That's an important point that I think is being missed by a lot of people.
Okay.
I thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar. You remind me of a meeting I had with some residents who told me that height is not their issue, density is. So perhaps we have found a way to bridge everybody's concerns. All right, Council, I see no more questions from us. And Madam Clerk, would you call the registered delegations?
Jonathan Spronson.
Mr. Spronson, welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you. I think most people know me by now. I'm sorry I wasn't here last week, or last month, I mean, when there was a presentation. But I'm here now to be the stick in the mud a bit. First, I'd like to, though, show my appreciation for council and the mayor, even Tom, for their amazing work at at keeping this in the public eye and not letting it just run through. It's been amazing to see what has been done by you people to keep this going, because it's a lot of boring stuff right now, but it's really important. And it's really important not only for Midtown and not for the south of Oakville, but for the north of Oakville. And these people are probably up there. It's really important because anything that goes for this area will be repeated, and not just in Oakville either. It'll be repeated on all of the 23 train stations. So I really appreciate what you've done, and everybody has been working on it. I really feel humbled by the residents' associations and all the people that have shown. My time isn't started, but this is good because I only wanted to spend 2 minutes on this. But I really want to show my appreciation for the residents' associations and the people that have stood up here, the experts in different things, and the people who have volunteered their time to take this on as the important thing it is. And I really feel humbled by the efforts they put in and the expertise of their presentations. I'd even like to thank town staff and the developers that have been involved in this, because it is a grinding process, and the developers are trying hard to follow some kind of rules, whether it's the province's rules or the town's rules or the old rules that we have. And I'm sure it's very frustrating for them to keep going back to the drawing board to try and come up with something that can be built. Last thing, I'd like to thank the group, I guess, at the town staff that put together a by the numbers video, which was very helpful in understanding. The one thing I didn't understand is where the 20 plus hectares came from 44 to 65, but that was great to see that it's really 65 hectares that are developable, plus the big gray question mark in the middle, which is land owned by us, the Ontario people, by IO. It's called a hydro corridor, but if you've walked down it, it's just got one pole going down the edge of it. So it's land that will be developed. So that says to me that there's probably more like 75 hectares, because that's about 10 hectares of land. So what I'm getting at is that we've come a long way from 44 hectares to 65 plus the gray zone, which will be developed if anybody's got a mind about development, which means that we've got about, at 1 times density, about 8 million square feet potentially there at 1 times density, or 1 FSI. 8 million square feet. That's a lot of square footage to be built, and it has been said that it's going to take some time, but that's an incredible impact on a city, a town the size of Oakville. What it means is if you have 800 square foot units, even at 1 times density, that's 10,000 units in the area. And at 5 times, which is what they're proposing, you can see what that does. That's 50,000 units in the area at 5 times density, or 4 or 3, whatever. That's a lot of people, even if you use the funny numbers of 1.3 for a 1 bedroom. A 1 bedroom at $450,000 can't be purchased or can't be handled by one person making a regular income. But anyway, so what I'm getting at is that we have to be really careful with these numbers, and I don't want to get caught up in these numbers, but if we're looking at a really livable neighborhood, and Oakville has been really strong at that we want to be a livable neighborhood. If we want to have a neighborhood that has the right number of people and cars, and it's got to be sustainable on a environmental level and we know on a tax base level. But things are going to change. The province has been starving the towns. It's been clear in the $2 million for spas and $80 million for tunnels that maybe it should be more into the hands of the communities and the town. They're talking about getting rid of development charges. How do you pay for overpasses without development charges? The last thing I want to say before I get to my comment is that we have time. There is no rush because the condo market is crushed. There's 200 odd sites that are in limbo, whether they're under construction or in drawings. They're not being built because it costs about 40% more to build them than they can sell them for. It's going to take time for that to correct, and it's going to take time for people to make enough money to afford these units. So in that time, instead of rushing, and I know nobody feels like we've rushed because I was here a year ago and we're still talking about it, which is great. But in that time that there won't be developments built unless the province thinks they'll subsidize it, 70% of units have to be sold before they can start construction, before they get funding from the banks. 70% of the units that are 40% more expensive to build than they can sell them for, it's going to take a while. So what's the solution? How do we get houses built? How do we get happy communities, neighborhoods, not districts? There was a report done just very recently by, environmental group? I'm sorry, I can't remember the name right now. I've got it written here somewhere. Anyway, the report came up with a single solution. It's the missing middle, the right size. Buildings that are 5 stories, some more, some less, but 5 stories generally. With that, on that site, at 2 FSI, we can easily get 40,000 people. 40,000 is much more than New York City and a lot of the other places that I know people have talked about. It's a high density. It's twice as many people as the minimum required, so it's within the law. It's a lot of people, and we can get more than that. That's with units that are 800 square feet, and a lot of the units will be less than that. So I'm here to say that I would really appreciate if we took another look at this. Instead of doing what we have done in the past and creating tall buildings and communities that nobody relate to think about human scale, humanity, a healthy planet, and healthy people. And think about what a mid-rise solution could do for us. And added to that, the idea, and I brought the book, and I hope everybody gets a chance to read this book at some point, The 15-Minute City. It's about how proximity can help increase our density of living and also make our planet healthier by having less dependence on cars. I really appreciate the fact that I've been able to have a say here. I think it's a real democracy when an individual, I'm representing OMG, our group of 3 that we're putting together a presentation for you. But I really appreciate the fact that we live in a democracy that allows people to speak and to get ideas out there. And these are not just my ideas, these are ideas from the whole planet that people are working on. So I think that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Sprossen, for your information. Let me just pause to see if there's any. Councillor Haslett-Deal has a question for you.
Jonathan, thank you. Thank you for the earlier suggestions about how we could do it. I mean, with all sincerity, I hope and wish you owned land in Midtown. And perhaps others that do own land in Midtown will consider the alternatives that you've suggested. So thank you for continuing on the journey with us. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, the next delegate.
Jeff Flemington.
Mr. Flemington? Mr. Flemington once, Mr. Flemington twice. I don't actually see Mr. Flemington here. Why don't we move on to the next one?
Aidan Tracy.
Mr. Tracy. I saw Mr. Tracy earlier. Welcome. We look forward to your information. Haven't seen you since a certain extracurricular activity we engaged in about power plants.
Correct. That's exactly the last time we spent some time together. Thank you, Mayor Burton and councillors and staff for allowing me to speak this evening. First of all, I just want to acknowledge the last speaker. I thought that was a fantastic presentation about our community and how important it is to think about this decision. The reason I'm here tonight is because I'm speaking on behalf of a growing number of local residents that are very, very concerned about the current situation regarding the proposed Midtown TOC development. On the positive note, it is great news that this evening you're hopefully all going to pass a new Oakville plan amendment for Midtown Oakville. I think that's an incredibly important first step. This seems like an important and much needed first step to ensuring the long-term health and viability of our community because, as you all know, we are supposed to be Canada's most livable city, right? Isn't that our tagline? And for those of you that don't know what Mayor Burton was just referring to, many of us who are concerned right now are reminded of an example from 15 years ago. And that's really my goal tonight, is to remind all of you that some of you were on council and some of you maybe weren't on council, but together, we all got together, a group of citizens that myself and a number of other very motivated citizens created the C4CA. And the Citizens for Clean Air actually decided to take on the province and take on a developer who had decided to put Canada's largest gas-fired power plant in the heart of the city. And at that time, many of us, including Mayor Burton, you may recall that we formed this group to collectively help the province understand that their proposal made no sense. It just literally defied common sense to put a 900 megawatt power plant 150 meters from schools, 8 meters from train lines. You might recall a train derailed in Burlington just a few months prior to them making the decision not to, and we had ammonia tanks right near the lines. You might recall that people said power plants don't blow up, and guess what? A power plant in the United States blew up and blew windows out for 3 miles around the plant. So it was just a flawed decision, right? It was just flawed from the beginning. And I don't need, you can all read Google and find out once we dug even harder what ended up happening, but it was a pretty testy time in the province, and Parliament got prorogued and all kinds of fun and games happened after there. So what I'd like to do is just ask you all to remember that collectively, we can take our case to Queen's Park. We've done it before. Mayor Burton, thank you so much for your help 15 years ago. I remember being on a stage with you and Pinball Clements in front of about 3,000 people in Queen's Park, reminding the province that they had a role to play in making sure that our communities are taken care of and that the province makes decisions that are on behalf of its citizens. That's their job. They are the elected officials to make sure our province is run properly. And I guess in this case, ultimately common sense prevailed and the power plant was stopped. And that happened despite the fact, you may recall, that a contract had literally been signed for $1 billion. And everyone said it was impossible. There's no way they would stop the plant. But the good news is, through all of your efforts and staff efforts and citizen action, common sense prevailed, the facts came to the table, and the plant was ultimately stopped. I think in this case, the good news is there is no contract signed between the province and the developer. There's still lots of time to step back and look at information from Jonathan and other amazing speakers who I'm sure are going to give the facts on why this particular TOC, in my opinion, and many other people that I've been speaking with, also makes no sense. The approved limits recommended by the province on this are about, I believe, 200 people per hectare. The proposal is 10 times that amount. The good news is your proposal that you're going to pass tonight is well above that, so there's no reason they shouldn't be willing to adjust that. And I think at this point, it's really empowered me to come here tonight to ask you some specific questions, which is, I'd like to know, after you immediately pass this evening, I'm hoping you're planning to pass it, what is our immediate next steps so that the TOC plan from the government and the developer understands that it doesn't sort of end with us passing the OPA tonight, it really begins tonight. And ideally, I just have some questions that I hope some of you might be able to speak on. One is, Has the council or mayor, have you had a chance to ask the premier or our local MPP how they plan to intervene and review the facts that have now been presented after months and months of hard work? Have they taken 20 minutes to actually see if this makes common sense? I'm not a developer and I'm not an engineer, but it doesn't seem to take rocket science to look at the size of the towers and how much land and just go, I just drove here and I know what congestion's like in Trafalgar right now. Pretty obvious what it means for North Oakville and West Oakville and pretty much all of Oakville 10 years from now. This is going to be a total disaster. Does the town have a proactive plan that starts tomorrow? That's one of the things that we did really well with the power plant is we had an action plan that was mapped out week by week by week. What was the cadence? And rather than waiting and then just hoping that the province makes a decision that's favorable, what are we doing? What is the plan from town and council? And then are we mobilizing resources? The great news about staff is there's a very competent staff here in town and we have the resources. Right now, it's very difficult to get citizens to, find the resources. Like back in the day, 15 years ago, we had lawyers and we had accountants and we raised a lot of money to make this something that, ultimately prevailed. One final question would be is, have we done a traffic study or are we doing a traffic study that's going to talk about what it means for North Oakville or West Oakville and the impact on their daily commute? The QEW is already one of the busiest roads in Canada and the exit at Trafalgar Road is about to get a whole lot worse over the next few years. So with that, I'm hoping that, my key message tonight is that the OPA being passed tonight is supposed to be the maximum upper limit. I know that you've set various standards on what can be passed, but my understanding is that's the maximum that the town feels is comfortable. We're all hoping that I think it will be less than that as people start to develop these buildings. I'm glad to hear that there is no market for condos right now because it should buy us another year or two at least to try and get development that's more in line with what makes sense for that site. And then look, I hope ultimately as council you'll remember that your actions now to try to defend the position that this is Canada's most livable city is really all about the next generation of people that are going to live in Oakville. This is a 10 to 20 to 30 year legacy that all of you will have a hand in shaping over the next 24 months. And I know my kids live in town still and love it here, and I'm sure many of you have children that would like to make Oakville home, and I hope we can all do our part to make that happen. So that's what I wanted to say tonight, and again, thank you for passing the OPA. I think it's a good step forward, but I'd love to know what the next steps are for all of us in the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tracy. I'll send you some material after the meeting to catch you up on those things.
Perfect. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Douglas McCurgan.
Councillor Hazletil.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Burton. Mr. Tracy actually asked some really excellent questions that other people may want to know. So maybe I can direct a question to the CAO just in regards to mobilizing resources to support community action in regards to the TOC. What is possible?
Through you, Mayor Burton. The TOC at this point in time, we have submitted our comments to the province, which very much reflects the objectives that we've set out through this official plan amendment that we're recommending for you to approve tonight. And so those comments have gone into the province. We are awaiting their review of those comments to come back with the next submission. We are hopeful and would hope they've listened to the comments that we have and come back with a proposal that's more in keeping with our plan. And actually moving forward tonight and approving this official plan amendment by all of council certainly sends a strong message to the Ministry of Infrastructure that this is the plan that this town supports. So this is that first step and a very important step for council to take so that we can begin or continue to speak to the Ministry of Infrastructure in terms of what their top proposal should be looking like, which is very much like our own official plan.
And has the TOC given you a date in which they would return?
No, they have not given us a date. As you know, once an election or the writ falls, the province can't have any discussion on it, and the provincial staff can have no discussion about what is happening at the province. So there's been nothing from them at all. After the election, they indicate they'll be back in touch with us.
Okay, thank you for that. Mayor Burton, is it possible to talk, or at what appropriate time would it be to clarify what kind of plan is in place, or that you have in place to raise this after the election is completed, or in discussions on the campaign trail?
Well, I don't think this is the appropriate time.
Can you confirm if there are any discussions?
No, I can't confirm that.
Thanks very much.
Madam Clerk, would you call the next delegation?
Jim Goodfellow. Doug McCurgan.
Welcome, Mr. McCurgan. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you. Last time I was here, I was told I spoke too softly. Can you hear me? Maybe raise my voice a bit. Thank you. I'm here tonight on behalf of Trafalgar Chartwell Residents Association. I'm a member of. Tonight's the end of a long journey, and we feel in Trafalgar Chartwell that we're obliged to be here and acknowledge where we are at the moment. So could I have the next slide, please? We have a proposed OPA which we support. We'd like to acknowledge the various people responsible. First of all, the town staff for their professionalism and hard work. There have been times when I didn't think we'd get here, but we have, and a lot of it's due to the work of the town staff the past year. Mayor and councillors for your endurance and patience, and finally to the residents for their engagement. I echo what Jonathan said. I think we've all done a great job collectively, and so well done us. Can I have the next slide, please? Our recommendation, no surprise, we're hoping that there will be unanimous council approval of the OPA and staff's other recommendations. We recognize that now the hard work really begins. The immediate priority, as Mr. Tracy was alluding to, is for Oakville to convince the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, A, to approve the OPA, and B, to ensure that Infrastructure Ontario's Oakville TOC proposal falls in line with the TOC, with the OPA. We just can't envisage the Oakville official plan, once it's amended, surviving intact if the Infrastructure Ontario's TOC goes through as planned, as proposed. It makes a mockery of all the work that we've done so far. We as residents intend to stay engaged. We're happy and willing to do what we can to help. So if you take what Mr. Tracy was proposing or suggesting, I think you can count on the residents to help. Anyway, obviously there's the CPPS and zoning and infrastructure and development. That's going to take decades before it's all done. Lots of work to do. Anyway, once again, well done, everyone. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. McCurgan. Councillor Chisholm has a question for you.
Thank you for the presentation, and thanks to the staff and your involvement with the process. It's been a long time, as you said, coming through, and hopefully we're there tonight. However, this is more directed to staff, and on page 19 of 121, I just want to have clarity on this. It says, a decision by the province on the TOC may consider, but is not required to conform to town's adopted policies. Is that definitive?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. Yes, councillor, that is in essence what it is. As Mr. Carr was outlining before, they can have regard for council's decisions as is outlined in the Planning Act, and that's basically the extent of it.
So I'm clear here. When we go through the process with the TOC, we'd like to have that flow into our OPA, but that's not guaranteed that's going to happen. So we just don't want the public to be, I guess, envisioned that once our OPAs hopefully is approved by the province, that the TOC has to fall in within those prescribed policies. That's not hard, fast, is it?
And through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. It wouldn't be hard and fast that way. It would be up to the Minister of Infrastructure to review the OPA as approved by the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and then update or the proposal as necessary to comply.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Clerk, the next delegation, please.
Jim Goodfellow.
Mr. Goodfellow, welcome. We look forward to your information.
Thank you. Well, it's good to be here tonight on the night that you folks are going to approve the new OPA. So let me also add to the congratulations to you, to staff, and to everybody that has tried to bring us here. It's really been a phenomenal piece of work, and I'm delighted that we're here where we are. I also want to tell you that We Love Oakville fully supports this OPA. We had a hard time getting here. Okay, had a hard time getting here, particularly around the density threshold and the limits kind of thing that we've discussed. So we've had a hard time getting here. We feel that this is, however, what needs to be done to get it move forward. But that also sets, what we think is a limit. That, if in the future we think it's difficult to envisage going above that limit, and we were delighted with the staff statement in their report that any density above the threshold that you folks are about to approve would also not be justified. So I'd like to make that clear. Okay. Passing the OPA does present a opportunity to integrate the work that's gone on with the TOC and bring it in line in all material respects with the OPA. Now, as just was mentioned a minute ago, that's not a done deal. That's a hard piece of work. And so that's what we got to chin ourselves up to. But as Aidan Tracy pointed out, we've done this before. And we can do it again. And I think that's the challenge we should be putting in front of us. Thomas Edison once said, vision without implementation is just a hallucination. Okay? And what we don't want to have happen is we don't want people down the road to say, geez, that OPA, that was a great dream, but it never happened. So we don't want this to be a dream or a hallucination, which means we got to get to that hard piece of work. And that lies right to the Successful implementation requires an immediate first step, which is that securing the provincial mandate that applies this OPA consistently across all of Midtown. So we have our OPA. The next step is the people that mandate these things, which is the province, has to convince that they do the necessary things to mandate this across Midtown, without exception, without exemption, and without any carve-outs. Because that will set the standards for the future. And that's a big challenge. Now you may feel pressed in this, but I remind you what Jonathan Prossen's just said. We do have time on our side here. Nobody's building the kind of things that are envisaged in that TOC. And there won't be for quite some time. And in fact, some people might say that we've saved some investors a ton of money by not building a whole bunch of things that they no longer can sell. So just a bye-bye. Okay. But moving forward does require us to address a fundamental incompatibility between the OPA and the TOC. The TOC is the result of a flawed process, and once again, flawed processes produce flawed products. And that's what we have. It's a bad outcome. We Love Oakville has complained about both the process and the outcome. In our view, the OPA and the TOC cannot coexist as independent planning frameworks with conflicting goals, parameters, and specifications set by two different parties. The win-win solution is clear, but difficult. The TOC must be fully aligned with the approved OPA in all material respects. A compromise that exceeds the OPA but is less than the TOC. That gap that's between your OPA and the TOC, a compromise in there is not acceptable, not justified, can't be supported. So in that regard, we have looked for someone to put our thoughts to, so we picked on you, Mayor Burton. We sent a letter today to you saying that we would like our leaders and you to advocate that they will strongly advocate for the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing to swiftly approve the OPA across all of Midtown without carve-outs, exemptions, or exceptions. So step number one, the minister to approve that. Step number two, then bring the TOC, which of course is a different department in the government, bring that in line so it aligns with the OPA. And that's a win-win solution. That meets, as staff has said, this OPA meets all of the provincial targets, meets the TOC objective, the program objectives. So, like, what's wrong with this picture? That is the challenge. So this is a win-win solution. Is it possible? Well, just remember what Aidan just said. Gave us the example. It is possible. It is possible. We can do it. And leadership is required not just from you, Mayor Burton, but from council and from all our elected representatives. So tomorrow, we'll be formally asking all of our MPP candidates to make the same level of commitments we've asked of you, and their respective parties. And we'll be taking action to try and make sure they deliver that commitment. But getting the commitment of all of our leaders is not just enough. We, the residents, and the people, we've got to be committed too. We've got to be committed to engage in the next steps, because this is the start of a journey where the CPPS is going to be a challenging thing to bring forward into reality. So we, the residents, need to make our commitment to you to work with elected leaders and hold all of us to account. So let's finish the job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goodfellow. Any questions, council? Madam Clerk, would you call the next delegation?
Anya Dunning.
Ms. Dunning, welcome. Council's looking forward to your information.
Good evening, Mayor Burton and councillors. My name is Anya Dunning. I'm here representing We Love Oakville. We congratulate you, council, and staff for your hard work in developing this OPA, and we hope you will unanimously approve it tonight. However, we are deeply disappointed that you, Mayor Burton, have not provided the clarity Oakville residents deserve regarding your position on the Midtown Official Plan Amendment, the OPA, and the province's Transit-Oriented Communities, the TOC, initiative. The OPA is a locally driven, well-researched plan that satisfies provincial requirements while ensuring that Midtown will be a livable, well-planned community. It is an ambitious but responsible plan, one that strikes the right balance between growth and the needs of current and future residents. Yet, after all the time and effort that has gone into developing this OPA, it appears that you're reluctant to fully champion it and demand its immediate implementation. This sends a troubling signal that provincial priorities take precedence over the will of the Oakville community. At the council meeting on January 27th, you clearly stated that you do not endorse the proposed TOC, yet you also said you preferred the very flawed, undemocratic process that created it. Here is what you said. I've been clear ever since the State of the Town address in October, if not before, that the TOC process is greatly to be preferred to the OLT process. The TOC process has already failed Oakville once, so why should we trust it again? Waiting for a revised proposal is not only unrealistic, it's reckless because it invites even greater provincial overreach. The OPA sets forth aggressive maximum density limits that should not be exceeded, as emphasized in the December 19th Planning Department's report to Infrastructure Ontario. Density of development beyond town's draft OPA allocation is not justified. Simply put, any proposed compromise solution or revised TOC proposal that does not comply with this OPA is unacceptable. By continuing to publicly support the TOC process as a preferred alternative and not providing strong, unequivocal support for this OPA encourages the province to keep overriding Oakville's local planning decisions. Trying to appease both sides instead of taking a principled stand increases the risk that Oakville will continue to lose control over its own future. Leadership requires taking a stand. Unanimously voting in support of this OPA is an important first step. But getting this OPA mandated for all of Midtown is the critical next step. On January 27th, this chamber was filled to a maximum, and there was at least 100 people in the overflow room and close to 700 people watching online. They were sending council and the province a strong message. Stand up for our community and the next generation of residents, and don't try and sell us down the river with some compromised backroom deal. January 27th shows Oakville's watching. We'll continue to inform residents about this high-rise hyperdensity threat and your response to it. We urge you not to waver. Unanimously approve this proposed APA and commit to champion its speedy implementation. We ask Council to act immediately and reach out to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs to ask they prioritize their final review of the OPA and to endorse this ambitious and responsible growth plan for Midtown. Thank you.
Thank you for your information. Questions? Councillor Hazat-Deal.
Mayor Burton, at the appropriate time, is it possible to hear from you maybe a path to doing what they've requested, which is whether it's letter writing or a strategy that goes to the Minister of Municipal Affairs to seek support to prioritize the final review of our OPA and endorse it? Is there a way to do something tonight in the recommendation, or do you have another suggestion which would expedite, or at least request expediting, an OPA that we all feel very strongly about?
The first job is to pass the OPA before we ask people to apply it. And as I've pointed out many times, this is a stepwise process. If we pass it, or when we pass it, I have 5 or 6 minutes of remarks prepared that may answer all of these questions.
We look forward to it. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Elizabeth Chambers.
Ms. Chalmers, council looks forward to your information.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight on behalf of the Joshua Creek Residents Association, and we are also part of the We Love Oakville group. JCRA supports the OPA currently before council, and we ask council to vote your approval of it. We are very appreciative of the extensive public engagement that has taken place on Midtown over a number of years. We thank planning staff for their considerable and comprehensive work drafting an OPA that will develop Midtown as a livable and complete community, and that will be defensible at the Ontario Land Tribunal should that be needed. We support the inclusion of the community permit planning system for its flexibility and efficiency, and for using it to increase community benefits, and the inclusion of landowner agreements to ensure coordination of the cost sharing, which is a necessary element and a complicated one at Midtown given the large number of property owners or landowners. It is imperative that Oakville has an OPA to direct Midtown development to ensure that it is developed as that complete and livable community always envisioned by residents, staff, and council alike. The JCRE does not support the province's transit-oriented community proposal for Midtown. In order for Midtown to be developed as complete and livable, the OPA must apply to 100% of Midtown. We are very cognizant that the TOC is not required to conform to the OPA, and accordingly, we ask for you, Mayor Burton, and for all of council to actively advocate for the province's Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing to approve OPA, the OPA once council passes it, and then to align their TOC proposal with the OPA or to withdraw the TOC, because the OPA needs to be applied to the entirety of Midtown. While so much work has been done to arrive at tonight's council vote on this recommendation report, work does remain outstanding. As noted in the staff report, ongoing monitoring of the implementation of this OPA is required to ensure that the goals and objectives of the Oakville Livable Plan are met. So JCRA hopes that public engagement continues on outstanding items like the Midtown Transportation Plan and the bylaw provisions for the CPPS, and our residents and our board are fully prepared to engage in that discussion. So thank you again for your time, and again we ask that council approves the Midtown OPA, and we ask for your advocacy to ensure that the OPA applies to the entirety of Midtown. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Chalmers. Council, questions? Thank you. Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Derek Zapp.
Mr. Zapp? Is Derek Zapp here? Welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you very much. I won't take long. As you may recall, I'm the president of Central Oakville Residents Association, and we're just standing here amongst our fellow RAs to support and recommend unanimous approval of the OPA. I also represent as a local advisory committee member for the transit-oriented community. It's an interesting process, so we're also here to hear your responses. We'd like to, it's an interesting process that our committee and our board have listened to, and we are supporting 100%. We're here on the 27th, our entire board and as our members here. We'd just like to thank the council and hope that you vote unanimously, work together with the great staff that you have, and support them. And we look forward to the next steps, and if there's anything we can do to support you as a resident association, representing wards 5 and 6, just north of the Midtown. So that's all I had for today, and we look forward to you passing this unanimously.
Thank you very much. I recommend that you stick around and, because there is going to be some work, or at least I'm going to describe some that we can all pitch in on. So thanks a lot.
We're here to support you, and when you asked for support on your housing numbers, we wrote the province as well.
Super.
I'm glad to see you got your money.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any more delegations? Are there any members of the public here who'd like to volunteer additional comments for council's consideration? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. All right, I'm confining the matter to table. Council, I open the floor to remarks, and after the vote, I'll have some comments, as I indicated earlier. Councillor Elgar.
Thank you. Mayor Burton, listening to the delegations and looking at our recommendations on 1 through 4, I'm wondering, is it possible that staff could help us prepare a recommendation 5, something along the line that we, as mayor and council, will advocate for a speedy approval by the minister or something, to try to just kick it off? Because it seems like that seems to be a common thread, and it sounds like a good idea. It can't hurt us.
Councillor, I recommend that you not decorate this recommendation with additional matters that I will cover later. Remember that what we're doing is we're passing an official plan amendment. It goes into its own approval process with the minister. I don't think there's any need for that, and I'm always cautious about embellishing things with stuff that doesn't belong there for the province's consideration. I do have, I believe I can satisfy the need for action and everything if you can just pass the amendment.
Okay, well, I look forward to what you're going to say, because to me, when I all the things I wrote down, almost every delegation, they want a commitment of not just the mayor, but councillors too, to show we're all in on it. And I think we are.
If you pass it, that is the definition of being all in on it.
But it's to get the speedy, it's the speed. I'm concerned it's going to go to the ministry and could sit there for months.
Well, it's going to sit there until the election is over, that's for sure.
Well, you know something, that's not even 2 weeks away. So that's not, I'm talking months, not days.
My recommendation, after more than 18 years as your mayor, is be cautious about what you say in this resolution. There's plenty of opportunity to make a different resolution. When you hear me, I don't think you'll need to do anything. But, I mean, let's stick to business, one piece at a time.
Okay, I look forward to your 5-minute dissertation.
I pray I keep it within 5. Councillor O'Meara.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. And I just wanted to make sure I got a crack at this before our councillors from Ward 3 do, because I know they have done so much work on this, and I want to thank them for that. And I want to thank staff for their work too, because it has been 8 years since we started down the path on this. So it has not been done lightly. It has not been done with expediency at the detriment of getting it right and getting it to where it needed to be. And as we heard a number of delegates speak tonight, about the appropriateness of respecting the process, right? And of being open and being transparent and not having decisions that are made in boardrooms, at tribunals, and these sorts of things. So I appreciate those words. And it speaks to, this is local democracy, and while people aren't always happy with the decisions that they get, when you go through a transparent process, sometimes it can be just as valuable as the outcome. Everybody knows what the rules are, and everybody played with them, and you understand where your points of interjection are. And when we as a council started going down a path and we weren't happy with the direction we were going, we struck a subcommittee and took the time we needed to go back and look at it again. And I thought that just adds to the depth that the residents came and that the staff went and the consultants and everybody added to the workload that has been done. I feel, and along with the residents I've spoken to, that this is the balance between growth that we've been mandated to take by the province, but it's not overdevelopment. And Oakville has seen, and we know what overdevelopment looks like. And that's why it's important that we dictate what our communities look like, because we're the people who reside here. We know what a great community looks and feels like, and we're best to build that base for the future. And it's by passing this OPA that we're delivering on our bargain that we have with the province. We've done what they've asked, and now it's their time to do what their part of the bargain is and pass this OPA. And I look forward to the mayor's comments as well, and whatever we can do as a council and whatever we can do as residents, because we're residents too. We live here as well. We're happy to do and happy to take any leadership and direction from the mayor that he sees best to continue. So thank you. Thank you for that, and thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's clear that I appear to be the only one between you and you're sharing the comments, so I'll try to make this fairly fast. Like to thank our council colleagues. As Sean mentioned, it certainly has been a journey. The staff, residents, and residents associations don't know what we're going to do without seeing you for the next couple of months, or feel going to be going into withdrawal a little bit. Doug, you said it's the end of a long journey. It's just starting, so rest up a little bit. I know that we can count on your continued involvement. It was, I think, 6 months ago today or tomorrow that the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing said that the new provincial planning statement recognizes that municipalities know best where and what types of homes are needed to address the unprecedented population growth that we've seen. So with that in mind, look forward to the mayor's comments, and at the appropriate time, sorry, Councillor Eller, I'd like to request a recorded vote.
Thank you, Councillor Dave. Councillor Haslett-Deal.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. Well, it's been a bit of a road, and I had to take a lot of time to go through stacks and stacks of notes and newsletters and articles, and then came back to a well-documented, well-put-together OPA to reflect on whether or not I can support it. The facts that we've all come to appreciate is that Midtown, while home to a busy GO station, has tremendous challenges. Midtown has 65 hectares of developable land. It's constrained by 3 primary arterial roads, a GO and a transit station that already are experiencing congestion, and it has verifiable capacity constraints. I concur with the comments I've heard from residents. This OPA at build-out and maximum FSI is at the upper limit of density that can be accommodated. Does it achieve all that some of us desired? No. No, because let's be honest, it's still a lot of people. And we don't really know how many people are going to live in each one of those apartment units, condos. But we do know that we do need housing, and we do know that we have to grow. This OPA is the result of considerable, thoughtful evaluation by planners, by market analysts, by economists, by lawyers, by engineers, and you, the public. It's balanced, it's defensible, and with a collaborative approach by all, does have the potential to achieve a vibrant, livable neighborhood. This OPA takes us to a far better place than we were a year ago. It carries forward an important principle from our current OP, that the exchange of benefits must occur if a developer wishes to exceed our height limit. It's a bold, responsible, balanced approach to optimizing the developable land. It also embraces community permit planning, and I call out to Councillor McNeice, who has helped us all appreciate the benefit that can come from implementing a community permit plan. It'll enable transparent exchange of benefits that directly support the vision for Midtown. And it's a benefit to all stakeholders, not just the community, but to the developers and to the town. And CPPS will speed up development approvals and therefore support the advancement of our housing objectives, something that's important to the province as well as us. The future potential of Midtown does rely heavily on those implementation studies that staff have committed to, particularly a Midtown Transportation Plan, the Community Permit Planning Bylaw, the public realm urban design work, sustainability efforts, and addressing the hazard and floodplain questions. It's a lot of work. It will rely on this council continuing to support the acquisition of parkland in Midtown and a provision of community services. I'm confident my fellow councillors will support this recommendation tonight, or who support it tonight, will stand by their commitment to this new community when the acquisition of parkland and the needs of this community come forward from those studies. The plan also has a great reliance on finding a way to influence Metrolinx to establish an eastern platform for the GO train, which will make a significant difference in the use of transit. It relies on truly thinking and designing for pedestrians and cyclists, because safe passage in and through Midtown can't be negotiable. It relies on a future green energy work that town staff have committed to this year for providing a sustainable neighborhood. Suffice to say, as Councillor Giddings has said, the work has really just begun. But it is time to move forward. The realization of the potential of Midtown will rely on all stakeholders respecting this OPA and the larger goal of building a community, not just a bunch of towers. Jamming more housing into an area does not change the constraints of the area or make a housing product more attractive. The market analyst report is very clear about that. In fact, putting too many people in will have serious social and economic impacts for all stakeholders and our infrastructure. So I conclude by saying thank you to the town staff for rising to the challenge. We pushed, but we're glad we pushed, because today what we have in front of us is something that we can support. And you did actively listen to all stakeholders, not just the folks who came to the podium, but the folks who wrote lots of letters. To the RAs, I think what I'm most proud of is that you were constructive and that you recognized that we have growth commitments that we must achieve. And I'm not sure how many times I was just mind blown by the quality of the research and the delegations. We're incredibly proud to work with you. And then finally, I thank my council colleagues. Some of you have gone the distance more than others, but everybody has invested a significant amount of time to make this happen. And we need to remember that when we lay a proper foundation for growth, we do make the future of Oakville brighter. And so I conclude with, remember, we want our future residents to thrive, not just survive. And so that's why we need a minister to stand up and support this, and we need action to ensure that our OPA is respected and that we can get on with doing what we do well, which is build a livable community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Your hand, if you could pull that down, that'd be great. Thank you. All right, Councillor Giddings has called for a recorded vote. Are there other speakers, or shall we call the vote? Madam Clerk, would you call the vote?
Councillor O'Meara.
Yes.
Councillor McNeese.
Yes.
Councillor Dudek.
Definitely yes.
Councillor Chisholm.
Absolutely yes.
Councillor Giddings.
Yes.
Councillor Hazlett-Thiel.
Yes.
Councillor Elgar.
Yes.
Councillor Longo.
Yes.
Councillor Burton. Sorry. I am so sorry. I was on a roll.
It happens so quickly, and you hardly see it coming.
I know.
I vote yes.
Thank you, Mayor
Thank you,
Burton.
Madam Clerk.
Counselor Knoll.
Yes.
Counselor Grant.
Yes.
Counselor Adams.
Yes.
Counselor Lischina.
Yes.
Counselor Nanda.
Yes.
Counselor Shi.
Yes.
And that passes unanimously.
Thank you, everybody.
Mayor Burton, sorry to interrupt, just for the purpose of completing my notes, I didn't quite catch who moved the motion.
I gave that honor to Councillor Haslett Thiel if she was willing to take it.
Thank you, I just didn't catch that in my notes.
Councillor? And that's a definite yes. Thank you, Solicitor. All right, I promised a few remarks, and I don't know. I might get the prize for going the longest here. I beg your forgiveness in the event that I go long. First, I could not answer the We Love Oakville letter or email without inadvertently or without, in fact, winding up participating in what would have become, by an answer from me, an illegal email meeting. And so I'm going to answer the We Love Oakville questions now. Along the way, as I favor you with some well-chosen remarks. It feels great to see Council and so much of the public united on the official plan amendment 70 for Midtown. The central goal of Council in the Livable Oakville official plan for almost 5 terms of Council is to conserve the character of our stable established neighborhood streets by focusing growth in transit-supported growth nodes across town to accommodate population forecasts that are assigned to the town by the province through the region of Halton. I'd like us to stop and consider for a moment what gets us here. We are an attractive and livable place to be. People pay premiums to buy homes here. We attract the world's best and brightest. Our population doubles on average every 30 years or so. The province takes note and forecasts our future growth accordingly. For our part, we continuously plan to accommodate their forecast and to be Canada's most livable, vibrant, and inclusive town. 2 terms of Council ago, in 2017, we passed Official Plan Amendment 15 to create growth capacity. We did that to keep protecting our neighborhood streets where we live, to limit sprawl, to protect the region's natural heritage system and the Greenbelt, to reduce our climate impacts, and to deliver housing variety for future residents. When Halton Region was setting population forecasts for distribution among the 4 Halton municipalities through Regional Official Plan Amendment 49, Oakville Council unanimously supported the bold step of supporting a population forecast for Oakville higher than Halton's staff forecast so that we could better achieve OPA 15's goals and values. And then, when the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing approved ROPA 49 in 2022, the minister reduced our population forecast. The minister decided we had been too bold in our forecast. Accordingly, I would say, we now are embedding the spirit of that ministry decision as to what is bold enough for us into OPA 70 for Midtown. OPA 70 for Midtown reflects feedback our residents gave for a Midtown with connections to surrounding neighborhoods, with sustainability, and with access to parkland, outdoor space, and schools. We will see growth in Midtown unfold gradually over several decades, not overnight or even within a single decade, but over 4 or 5 or more decades. Passing OPA 70 is only the policy phase in realizing Midtown, as was shown in the staff report. We must understand and stay engaged in 4 future phases ahead of us that will plan transportation, schools, jobs, and so on, and those will bring OPA's policies to life. Above all, this is a realistic OPA, not just a bold one, because OPA 70 reflects current market trends, forecasted future demand, and realistic absorption rates. And this OPA includes, as it should, the entirety of the Midtown lands. OPA 70 will result in needed housing sooner than the impractical, unrealistic, and overambitious TOC proposal ever could. OPA 70 will enable us to meet and exceed provincial growth forecasts and achieve our own objectives of a livable, vibrant, and inclusive new community for all. I will strongly advocate for the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing to swiftly approve the OPA across all of Midtown without any carve-outs, exceptions, or exemptions. I support alignment of all future TOC proposals in all material respects with the OPA to ensure there is cohesive, consistent, and comprehensive planning for Midtown, which is the very definition of good planning. We Love Oakville may very well be or have become the equivalent of C4CA in this chapter of our lives. I thank our residents, our professional staff, and each council member for their dedication and commitment so far, because this is not the end of our work together. This is only the beginning of the rest of our work to create the most livable, vibrant, and inclusive new community in a protected major transit station area anywhere in Canada. Let no one doubt Oakville's ability for great and inspiring results. Oakville is a town people are proud to come home to. Together, we will keep increasing our pride in this town we all love. Thank you very much for everything that you've done tonight and will keep doing for this town. Council, it would now be my pleasure to solicit from you a motion to rise and report to council. Councillor O'Meara and Councillor Longo, thank you. Any objection? There being none, that carries. I rise and report the Committee of the Whole has met and made recommendations on discussion item 7.1. I'd like a mover and seconder for this report. And that would be Councillor Grant and Councillor Elgar. Any objection? Seeing none, that's carried, and the report is adopted. Council, do you have any new business of an emergency, congratulatory, or condolence nature? Madam Clerk, there's none. I would then solicit a mover and seconder for consideration and reading of the bylaws as listed in the agenda. Councillor Knoll and Councillor Shia, thank you. Any objection? There being none, the bylaws are considered read and passed, and that completes the work of this meeting. Thank you very much. I think this very well is the record for the longest we've ever worked on an amendment to the official plan. Let's hope that the result reflects the effort that we gave it. Good night, everybody.